We're looking at what I think is going to be the next project for Bailey's Builds, and it's going to be the restoration of this little item. So stage one is going to be a quick clean-up with some sugar soap. It's really cutting through it, isn't it? Good stuff, that. So the astute amongst you may notice signs that this little cabinet unit has had more than one restoration, and I suspect at one point originally it might well have been just with a beech varnished finish, and otherwise why put on a nice, why make it from beech in the first place, why not just a softwood? Then it's been painted white at some point, and then it was painted this lovely avocado green. Who knows when, but it's a long time since that colour's been in fashion. But you can also see here extensive signs all over the unit of these swirls, and I remember from my early DIY days back in the 1980s making similar marks on things that I was trying to refinish myself, and this is where a disc sander basically has been used rather than something like a random orbital sander, and unfortunately it has left extensive scratches, particularly areas like this where it goes across the grain. What I'm hoping though is that the paint finishes on it have been so thick that these scratches are not going to show in the final finish. I can't feel them with my finger, so I don't think they're actually going to show. But it does mean that any thought of leaving this as just as finished wood rather than a painted finish is definitely really not going to happen, because it would require such a lot of work to remove all of these fairly extensive scratches from the body of the entire cabinet, and it's just not worth investing that much time on it. So I think that seals its fate. Black, matte or black eggshell it's going to be. So Sam and I were discussing the merits of different ways of getting in the reveal of these panels here in terms of sanding them adequately, and having considered various machine type options, there always has to be a machine, doesn't there? Seemed to me that maybe simple was better. Bit of sandpaper, fold it up to make a nice crisp edge, 180 grit, no problem. So we've reached that stage with this one now where all the sanding has been done, surfaces are pretty clean. Unfortunately, there are traces, as you can see in the box here, of the drawer, that it's got some staining, and I'm not going to be able to get rid of that, so we are going to have to paint the inside of the drawer. That might be why it was covered with this wonderful Blue Peter era sticky back plastic stuff. Certainly dates it quite well, doesn't it? What are we doing, Sam?
Sanding.
Sanding, ready for painting. So for the most part, we were doing most of this restoration work outside in our portable workshop, the gazebo, and, which is really useful. But it has been so cold and damp and miserable that this primer that we have been using has just not been drying out there. It's supposed to be touch dry in 30 minutes and it's supposed to be ready to repaint, recover in 1 hour to 2 hours, depending on conditions. So that's normal conditions. But after well over 1 hour, this paint was still quite wet. In fact, some of it after nearly 2 hours. So we haven't been able to do that. So that means that I've brought stuff inside into what is definitely not a workshop space really, and just to try and finish off some of this initial priming. But hopefully we'll get it done soon enough, and then once that's all dry, we'll be able to get on with putting the black down, the black eggshell. Looking forward to doing that. The other thing that's occurred to me as I have been painting this with brush and roller is that I think the whole thing would probably have been a much easier experience had we been using a spray. It would have, well, not necessarily easier, it would certainly have been a lot quicker. But we don't have spray gear, or at least not that I would want to use for this. Just tucking in first, or touching in the reveals of these panels with a brush, just as I would do with the shaker doors and things that we make. And then once the panels are done, once the reveals are done rather, then we'll do the frame and panels. Always looks pretty messy to begin with. So Sam's going to finish off painting this stuff now, and then hopefully today the hardware, the copper knobs for it will arrive, and we'll be able to get doors and hinges fitted back on, and we'll have a complete unit, and we'll show you what it looks like at the end and just do a bit of a summing up of what we've done. So there you have it. We've taken this nice little fairly basic cabinet from a state of dereliction and abandon at the dump, and we've turned it into, I think, what was pretty much my vision for it, this slightly more sophisticated look, as much as it can be for a unit of this sort of build quality, of a matte black with these very simple copper handles. Hasn't been too much work, a lot more paint applied to it than I would have expected. Particularly we put 4 coats in fact on the top, and before I finally close this one off, it's possible that I may well decide to burnish the very top of it with some very fine abrasive pad, because at the moment any little kind of rubbing on the surface does make a mark, and I don't really want to leave it in that state for the next owner of it. So we'll probably just burnish it, just to give it a fine, very fine burnished finish, and that will help it to resist showing up little touches and things, little scrapes and little marks just from fingerprints, things that are put down on it, that kind of stuff. But overall, I think a pretty successful outcome. Very pleased with our little cabinet. I hope you found this in some way entertaining, informative, or useful. And thank you for watching. We'll see you again next time on Bailey's.